you've seen. And I want to talk about the difference between tint, tone, and shade as you apply them to color. In this case, with the technique that we'll be working on, I'm just going to use red paint because it's easiest if you begin by working in with a primary color. And as you do your second color scale sample work, then you can begin mixing a secondary and then a tertiary color. So the biggest thing that you're going to want to keep in mind as you are doing these studio exercises is consistency of the paint. The paint, you're going to want to add some water to it. So I want you to pay attention to the consistency that you see here. I've added enough water that it's a little bit of a puddle. And then you'll also notice that I'm working with two different kind of brushes. So the brush with the red paint on it, as you can tell, there's quite a few less bristles, and they're not holding as much paint as the bristles on the white brush. The paint, you can see the consistency of the paint right here is pretty thick versus right here where I've added the water. That actually helps it to move a little bit more easily. And so for tinting, for the purpose of this activity, I'm just going to be working with the same color throughout, and we'll just stick with red so that you can compare this to the previous images that I've shown you. And in this case, I'm going to work with two different brushes, and that's typically what you're going to want to do. We'll start on the tint end with some pretty thick red paint. I want you to pay attention to the consistency of the paint as I'm moving over. Right here, you're going to notice that the paint is starts to dry out, so it kind of looks like a dried out marker. And what that means is you either don't have enough paint or you don't have enough water. So if I just get the tiniest bit of water and add it to that color to extend it, you'll notice that it spreads and I can go a little bit farther, and it also gets a little bit more clear, obviously, because we're diluting it. On the opposite end of the far opposite end of the spectrum, I'm going to start with my white paint, and I'm going to move. You'll notice these two brushes are pretty different. This brush in my right hand that has the white paint has quite a few more bristles, and it's been used quite a bit more than the brush that's in my left. And I like to have a difference in brushes because the thicker brush can hold more paint, and so you'll have more room as far as spreading the color or the paint itself goes, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility. So at this point, we're going to intersect the two colors. And I want you to pay attention to how quickly my hand is moving, and that's because a paint, an acrylic paint in particular, has a tendency to dry really fast. I will let you use some opener to help you keep that color open, but I want you to get used to moving quickly. And the thing that we're going to be working on here is trying to blend consistently from one side to the next without too many brush strokes or too many lines in between. So notice how my paintbrush has red on it now because I went over to the left with it. And you want to be pretty clean with your brushes so that you don't have color moving where you don't want it to. So I always have a paper towel handy, and frequently I will rinse off my brush and go back to the color with a clean brush. And that helps me control how quickly the paint is going to blend. So now that I've gone this far over to the red, I'm going to wipe my brush off and rinse it off just to make sure I don't contaminate the far side of the white with more red. And at the same token, I'm going to get my red brush, and I'm mixing this middle zone in so that it's really a smooth transition. The idea in a scale like what we're doing is that there shouldn't be It should be a gradual blending from light to dark, from one side to the other. You're going to be doing quite a few of these just to help you get used to the process of blending, and this is a really good process for learning how to control consistency and the way that the paint moves and everything else. You know what they say, practice makes perfect. So even after a decade or more of working with paint, I still find that these scales are somewhat challenging. Alright, so that's a pretty smooth transition. I like that. I'm going to bring it up a little closer so you can actually see better. There are some brush strokes, but you really can't see a whole lot of them if I hold it super close for you. So it's a pretty smooth transition. So that's tinting the color, which means adding white.